Before dawn breaks over Rome in the year 38 CE, an empress lies dying in a garden, 22 years old, surrounded by soldiers, her hands still warm with the heat of scandal. They will call her the most depraved woman who ever lived. They will say she competed with prostitutes, that she destroyed her husband's empire with desire alone. But here's what they won't tell you: every man who condemned her had done far worse. Her only crime, she refused to disappear. Cassina's hands won't stop shaking. Not from fear she killed that years ago, but from rage. Pure white-hot rage that makes her want to tear the golden crown from her head and throw it through the palace window into the Roman streets below. She's 15, married 3 hours ago, and her husband, the Emperor of Rome, is snoring. The wedding crown digs into her scalp. Each ruby catches her hair when she moves. She touches one, feels its sharp edge, imagines pressing it hard enough to draw blood. Her blood. His blood. Anyone's blood, but the invisible kind that's already pooling around her feet. The slow bleeding out of every choice she'll never make. Her mother's words from this morning echo, "Stop mourning what you never possessed." But that's a lie. She did possess something once, before the betrothal, before senators started visiting her father's house talking about alliances and legitimacy while looking at her like she was livestock being priced for market. She possessed herself. Cassina stands, moves to the window. Below, torches flicker in the Subura district. Rome's beating heart, where sailors fight over dice, where merchants cheat customers, where prostitutes call out prices from doorways. 1 million people down there making their own mistakes, choosing their own ruins. And she's up here, Empress of the world, trapped in the safest cage ever built. My lady, a slave girl, stands in the doorway, maybe 12 years old, eyes down, hands clasped. "What's your name?" Cassina asks. "Lydia, my lady." "Lydia, if you could go anywhere in Rome tonight, anywhere at all, where would you go?" The girl's eyes flicker up, confused. I'm not permitted." "I know, but if you could." A pause. Then, barely audible, "The Subura, my brother works there. I haven't seen him in 2 years." Cassina smiles. It's not a kind smile. "Bring me your oldest tunic, a dark cloak, and a blonde wig if you can find one." She watches the girl's face go pale. "Do it now. Tell no one, or I'll have you sold to the mines before dawn." 40 minutes later, Cassina stands in a Subura alley wearing rags that smell like soap and sweat. The blonde wig itches. Dirt on her face. No jewelry, no guards, no one bowing. She takes 3 steps and a man bumps into her shoulder. Doesn't apologize, just keeps walking. The shock of it being touched without permission, without consequence, hits her like cold water. She stands frozen for a moment, then laughs. Actually laughs. The sound surprises her more than the collision. A tavern ahead spills lamplight and shouting. She walks toward it the way you walk toward a cliff edge, knowing it's dangerous, unable to stop. Inside, the air is thick with wine smell and bodies. Soldiers crowd around tables, throwing dice and coins. A woman serves drinks, slapping away hands that grab at her. In the corner, 2 men argue over a debt. No one looks at Cassina. No one cares. She's never felt more alive. "You lost, girl." A woman's voice cuts through the noise. 40-something with hard beauty and harder eyes. She's wearing red, the kind of red that announces a profession. "You've got that new lamb look." "First time in the Subura." "Yes." Cassina surprises herself by telling the truth. The woman laughs, rough knowing. "Sit, before someone mistakes you for merchandise." They sit. The woman pours wine from an earthen jug. It tastes like vinegar and smoke. "I'm Scylla. I own 3 establishments in this district. What are you running from, lamb husband father debt?" "A cage." "Ah, the philosophical kind. Worst type." Scylla drinks deeply. "Rich girl slumming." "Something like that. Let me tell you something about cages." Scylla leans forward. "Men think they built all of them. The laws, the property rights, the marriage contracts. But there's one cage they can't control: what they want. Their desire. That hunger they can't legislate away." She taps Cassina's wrist. That's where women like us operate. In the gap between what they need and what they'll admit they need. You're saying desire is power. I'm saying desire is the only power that survives when everything else gets taken away. Scylla refills their cups. Why are you really here? Cassina meets her eyes. I want to learn what you know. About what? Power. The kind that can't be stripped away by a signature on a marriage contract. Scylla studies her for a long moment. Then, you want to work for me? Yes. You'll serve whoever pays. No exceptions. No running to daddy when some sailor gets rough. You'll give me 30%, and you'll do exactly what I tell you. Understood? Cassina feels something ignite in her chest. Not fear, not excitement. Something darker and more necessary. Understood, Scylla grins. Tomorrow night, ask for the house with the blue door. Dash. Historical note. The Roman historian Cassius Dio wrote of Messalina Cassina's historical counterpart. She would leave the palace at night in disguise to work in a brothel, not for money, but from a desire to experience what common women experienced. But Dio was writing 150 years after her death. How much was truth? How much was propaganda designed to destroy a woman who threatened male power? The blue door opens to a narrow house that smells like incense and bodies. Scylla waits inside with 3 other women. Strip. Cassina hesitates. In the palace, slaves undress her. Here command and humiliation blur together. She removes her disguise. Stands in borrowed underclothes. One of the women circles her. Pretty enough. Young. That'll fetch premium. She works the back room tonight, Scylla says. Second door. Whoever pays. Remember, lamb 30% goes to the house. The rest is yours. And don't pretend this is anything but what it is. Commerce. Bodies for coins. Understand? Cassina nods. Say it. I understand. Good. Your name tonight is Helena. Now go. The back room is small. A bed, a basin, a lamp. Cassina sits on the edge of the mattress and realizes her hands are shaking again. Not from rage this time, from something she can't name. The door opens. His name is Marcus, a baker, 30-something nervous, clearly spending money he shouldn't. He stands in the doorway like he's not sure he's allowed to enter his own transaction. You're Helena. Yes. Cassina's voice sounds strange to her own ears. He sits on the bed's far edge, a full arm's length away. Have you done this long? No. Me neither. I mean, I haven't been to a place like this before. He laughs awkwardly. My brother said it would help. With grief. My wife died last winter. Fever. Cassina looks at him. Really looks. Sees the shadows under his eyes, the mourning ring on his finger he forgot to remove. I'm sorry, she says. Everyone says that. But they don't mean... He stops. You actually sound like you mean it. I do. They sit in silence. The lamp flickers. From another room, muffled sounds, transaction becoming act, becoming silence again. Finally, Marcus speaks. Can we just talk? I'll pay the full amount. I just can't. Not yet. Not with a stranger. So they talk. He tells her about his wife, how she sang while kneading bread, how she wanted 3 children, but they'd only had time for 1, how the fever took her in 4 days, and he still finds her hair in his clothes sometimes. Cassina tells him nothing true about herself, but she listens with a focus that surprises them both. When his hour ends, he stands, presses coins into her palm. Thank you, Helena. You didn't have to be kind. Neither did you. After he leaves, Cassina stares at the coins. 6 bronze asses. Her cut is 4 after Sylla's percentage. She's the Empress of Rome holding payment for an hour of conversation in a brothel. The absurdity should make her laugh. Instead, she cries. Not from sadness, from relief. Because for 1 hour, someone treated her like a person instead of a political asset, and that person didn't even know who she was. She goes back 6 more times over the next month. The second night, she serves a soldier who tells her about the girl he loved back in Gaul. The third night, a merchant who negotiates the price like he's buying grain, then falls asleep before touching her. The fourth night, a senator's son who weeps about his father's expectations. The fifth night, someone gets rough. His name doesn't matter. What matters is he's drunk and angry, and when Cassina says no to something, he doesn't care. "I paid," he snarls, grabbing her wrist hard enough to bruise. "You do what I want." Cassina's training kicks in, not palace training, but older training. Survival training every woman learns. She goes still. Calculates. The door is 8 feet away. He's stronger, but slower. "Let go," she says quietly. "Make me whore." The door crashes open. Sylla stands there with 2 men enforcers, probably ex-gladiators, judging by the scars. "Out," Sylla says. The man releases Cassina's wrist. Stands. "I paid. And now you're leaving. Before my associates, make sure you never use what you paid for again." He leaves. Sylla checks Cassina's wrist. Already purpling. "You all right, lamb?" "Yes." "No, you're not. First time." "That's someone." Cassina can't finish the sentence. "Welcome to the actual world." Sylla's voice is surprisingly gentle. "The one where your body isn't protected by guards and laws, where no is a suggestion men can choose to ignore. How do you stand it? By remembering that I choose to be here. Choice, even bad choice, beats the alternative." Sylla tilts Cassina's chin up. "Who are you really, lamb? Because girls who work for me are desperate or ambitious or broken. You're something else." Cassina pulls away. Someone trying to understand the difference between freedom and power. Then you're in the right place. Because here's the lesson: freedom is an illusion. Power is all that's real. And the moment you understand that, you become dangerous. By month 3, Cassina's routine is established. Palace by day, smiling at senators, pouring wine at state dinners, sleeping in separate chambers from her husband. Subura, by night, learning the invisible architecture of desire and control. She starts noticing things. How senators' wives talk at palace gatherings, the coded language, the strategic friendships, the way information flows through gossip like poison through water. One afternoon, Senator Marcus Antonius's wife, a woman named Flavia, pulls Cassina aside at a garden party. "You're different from other imperial wives," Flavia says. "They're all performance. You're watching." Cassina smiles. Is watching a crime? In Rome sometimes. Flavia glances around, then lowers her voice. "Can I trust you?" This is the moment. Cassina feels it like a shift in air pressure before a storm. Yes, she lies. Flavia's confession spills out an affair with her husband's freedman, the pregnancy she terminated, the blackmail she's been paying for 6 months. She's desperate, terrified, trapped. Cassina listens, nods sympathetically, offers wine and understanding, and remembers every detail. 2 weeks later, when Senator Antonius publicly questions the emperor's competence in the Senate, Cassina arranges a private dinner, just her, the senator, and Flavia. The conversation turns carefully, inevitably, to intimate matters. Cassina guides it like a shepherd guides lambs toward a gate. Wine flows. Guards are dismissed. Finally, Cassina says, "Flavia shared something with me recently about your freedman Marcus, the pregnancy, the blackmail payments." Flavia goes white. The senator's face hardens. Cassina continues, voice soft. "How terrible if this became public. Your political enemies would destroy you. Your family's name would be ruined for generations." Silence stretches like a blade being drawn. "What do you want?" Senator Antonius asks. "Your loyalty. To the emperor. In the Senate. On every vote." Cassina meets his eyes. And your silence about this conversation. The senator's jaw clenches. Then, agreed. They leave quickly. Cassina sits alone in the dining room staring at her untouched wine. She feels powerful, then empty, then powerful again. The cycle is beginning. That night she returns to the Subura, finds Scylla at the blue door. I did something today, Cassina says. Political or personal? Both. Scylla pours wine. Tell me. Cassina describes the blackmail, the leverage, the victory that tastes like ash. When she finishes, Scylla nods slowly. You've crossed a line, lamb. Before you were playing at power. Now you're using it. Is that wrong? Wrong, no. Dangerous, absolutely. Scylla drinks. You know what happens to women who accumulate real power in Rome? They get destroyed. Publicly. Thoroughly. Turned into cautionary tales for girls not yet born. Then what's the alternative? Stay small, stay quiet, survive. Cassina laughs, that brittle sound that's becoming familiar. I can't. I know, that's why I'm worried about you. Historical note. Tacitus wrote, Messalina believed that infidelity, not even when notorious, brought ruin until she began to compete with prostitutes. But Tacitus was writing under emperors who needed Messalina to be a monster. His sources were men who had everything to gain from her destruction. Month 4. Cassina hosts her first masked gathering at the palace. She invites 10 women senators' wives, daughters of generals, even a Vestal virgin. She's befriended through careful cultivation. No husbands, no slaves, just masks and wine and conversations that start political and end confessional. By midnight, she knows which wives hate their husbands, which daughters dream of escape, which priestess breaks her vows monthly with a married consul. She writes nothing down. Doesn't need to. Her memory has become a weapon. One of the women, drunk laughing, says, we should do this weekly, our own little conspiracy. Yes, Cassina agrees, our own little conspiracy. But she's not thinking about friendship. She's calculating leverage, mapping power, building an invisible empire of secrets and debts. The empress who can topple anyone becomes the empress no one can topple. That's the theory. Her husband summons her on a rainy afternoon in month 6. Emperor Claudius stands by the window in his private study, watching water stream down marble. He doesn't turn when she enters. Where do you go at night? He asks. Cassina freezes, considers lying, then realizes he already knows. Away, she says, to the Subura, to brothels, to places where you think no one knows who you are. Now he turns. His face shows no anger, just profound sadness. Do you think I'm blind, or simply too weak to stop you? Both, Cassina says, because she's tired of pretending. He almost smiles. Fair enough. I am both those things, but I'm not a fool. He moves closer. I know what my freedmen do, how Narcissus and Paulus manage me like I'm a child playing emperor. I see everything, Valeria. I just lack the strength to change it. Then why are you emperor? Because 60 men with swords decided I was the safest option after they murdered my nephew. Not the best. The safest. He studies her. You think you're accumulating power. You're accumulating enemies. Better than accumulating nothing. Is it? He turns back to the window. I know what happens to people who mistake control for freedom. It destroyed Caligula. It destroyed Tiberius before him. It will destroy you. That's my choice. No. His voice hardens. It's not. Because when you fall, I fall with you. And Rome falls with us both. He dismisses her with a wave. Cassina leaves, returns to her chambers, removes her jewelry piece by piece until she's wearing nothing but her own skin and rage. That night she doesn't go to the Subura. She goes to the palace's highest tower and looks down at Rome, a city of marble and shit glory and degradation, power, and powerlessness all mixed together until you can't tell which is which. And she makes a decision. If Rome wants a monster, she'll become one. But on her terms, by her design, she'll turn this cage into a weapon, or die trying. In the shadows below the emperor's freedman, Narcissus says to his colleague Paulus, the Empress is becoming dangerous. To whom? Everyone, especially herself. Should we act? Not yet. Let her climb higher. The fall will be more complete. They don't know that in 2 years their patience will pay off with the most spectacular political execution Rome has ever seen. But tonight, they just watch and wait. And somewhere in the city, a young senator named Gaius Cillian attends his first imperial banquet, about to meet an empress whose gaze will ignite the fuse that destroys them both. The mask is slipping. The real performance is about to begin. The banquet hall glitters with 1,000 oil lamps when Cassina first sees him. Gaius Cillian stands near the fountain wearing white, the color senators wear when they're trying to look virtuous. 26 years old, tall, the kind of beautiful that makes people forget to breathe. Dark curls, eyes that scan the room like he's calculating every angle, every advantage. He catches her staring, smiles. Not the practiced smile men use at imperial banquets. Something sharper, more knowing. Cassina looks away first, feels her pulse in her throat. Across the hall, Narcissus watches them both. The emperor's freedman has survived 3 regimes by noticing things other people miss. He leans toward Paulus, whispers, she's looking at him like he's water and she's been walking through desert. Young Cillian ambitious, clever, dangerous combination. For whom? For everyone within reach when he explodes. They're both right, but they're also 6 months too late. The fuse is already lit. Cassina moves through the crowd accepting wine she doesn't drink, making conversation that means nothing. But her attention stays locked on the young senator near the fountain. She's built an empire of secrets over 6 months, knows which wives cheat, which husbands steal, which priests break vows. But she doesn't know anything about Gaius Cillian, except that looking at him makes her feel 18 instead of nearly 16 alive, instead of performing alive. He approaches just before midnight. Empress. His bow is technically correct, but somehow manages to mock the gesture. Your husband gives excellent parties. My husband gives what his advisors tell him to give. The honesty surprises her. She's been lying so long the truth feels foreign in her mouth. Honest. How refreshing. Gaius accepts wine from a passing slave. Most people at these events speak in code. Politics wrapped in pleasantries, wrapped in more politics. And you don't? I do. Constantly. But I appreciate when others admit the game we're playing. He studies her over the rim of his cup. You're younger than I expected. Disappointment. Curiosity. They say you're different from other imperial wives. They say many things. Cassina meets his eyes. What else do they say? That you leave the palace at night. That you host private gatherings. That you collect secrets like other women collect jewelry. He leans closer. That you're either brilliant or insane and no one's quite sure which. Cassina feels ice spread through her chest. How much does he know? How many people know rumors, she says lightly. Of course. Rome thrives on rumors. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. The question is, which rumors are useful? Useful for what? For surviving Rome, for accumulating power, for becoming someone history remembers. He pauses. Or have I misread you entirely? This is a test. Cassina recognizes tests now. She's been administering them for months. History remembers very few women, she says carefully, and usually for the wrong reasons. Then perhaps the solution is to give them the right reasons to remember you. And if the right reasons look like the wrong ones from certain angles, then surround yourself with people who understand angles. Gaius sets down his cup. I should return to boring conversations with old men about grain shipments. But I hope we'll speak again, Empress. He disappears into the crowd. Cassina stands very still, aware that something has shifted. She's been playing games with senators' wives and frightened husbands, people who could be controlled through their weaknesses. But Gaius Cillian isn't weak. He's hungry, ambitious, recognizes her hunger because it matches his own, which makes him either an ally or a threat, possibly both. Scylla's words from last week echo, "The moment you meet someone who wants what you want, that's when things get bloody." Cassina drains her wine in one swallow. Across the hall, her husband watches. Emperor Claudius sees his young wife staring after the beautiful senator, sees how her breathing has changed. He signals his cupbearer for more wine and thinks about the letter he received this morning from Narcissus, listing Cassina's activities over the past 6 months in excruciating detail. The emperor is weak, but he's not blind. He's just been waiting for her to make the mistake that gives him permission to act. 3 weeks later, that mistake begins taking shape. Cassina hosts another gathering, 12 women this time. Masks mandatory. No slaves permitted past the antechamber. She's created a space where Rome's most powerful women can speak without consequence, confess without judgment, or so they think. Tonight's conversations are darker than usual. Someone mentions the emperor's stutter, how he can barely finish sentences at Senate meetings. Laughter ripples through the room. Another woman talks about her husband's impotence, describes his attempts with clinical cruelty. More laughter. Then Flavia, the senator's wife, Cassina, blackmailed 2 months ago, says something that makes the room go silent. What if we just killed them? Who? Someone asks. Our husbands. The senators, all of them. Flavia's drunk words slurring. We poison them slowly, inherit their wealth, marry men we actually want, or don't marry at all. Just stop pretending. Nervous laughter, but also something else. Consideration. Cassina should stop this, should steer the conversation back towards safe scandal. Instead, she hears herself say, how would that work exactly? And they begin planning. Not seriously, at least not entirely seriously. But the words spoken aloud change something, transform fantasy into possibility. By the time the gathering ends at dawn, 6 women have pledged money to a theoretical fund for theoretical assassinations that will theoretically never happen. Cassina watches them leave, one by one, masks concealing faces that revealed too much tonight. She's crossed another line. She can feel it. What she can't feel yet is the informant in the group, a woman whose husband beats her weekly, who came to Cassina's gatherings hoping for escape and found only deeper trap. A woman desperate enough to trade information to Narcissus for passage to Egypt and enough gold to start over. The emperor's freedman receives his report 3 days later, reads it twice, then goes to find Paulus. We need to move faster, Narcissus says. Why let her accumulate more evidence against herself? Because she's not accumulating evidence anymore. She's accumulating followers, women who will lie for her, cover for her, die for her if necessary. He tosses the report on Paulus's desk. She's trying to build something. We need to destroy it before it has foundations. How? Narcissus smiles. Give her what she wants most. Then make it the weapon that kills her. Which is love. Or what someone like her mistakes for love. Meanwhile, Cassina returns to the Subura. She hasn't visited Scylla's establishment in 3 weeks, been too busy with palace politics. But tonight she needs to remember who she was before the crown became weapon. The blue door opens. Scylla takes one look at her face and pours wine without speaking. They sit in the back room where Cassina first served Marcus, the grieving baker, 6 months ago. That memory feels like it belongs to someone else. You look different, Scylla finally says. Different how? Harder. Emptier. Like you've been scooping out pieces of yourself and replacing them with something else. Cassina drinks. Maybe that's necessary. For what power? Scylla leans forward. I told you months ago, power is real, freedom is illusion. But there's a third thing I didn't mention. What? Humanity. The part of you that feels guilt and mercy and love and fear. That's the part you're carving out. And once it's gone, lamb, you're just a monster wearing a woman's face. Maybe monsters survive longer than women do. Survive, yes, but for what purpose to die alone and hated? Scylla grips Cassina's wrist. You came here 6 months ago because you wanted to understand something. Have you learned it yet? I've learned that desire is power, that secrets are currency, that everyone can be controlled if you find the right pressure point. That's not understanding. That's tactics. Scylla releases her. The real lesson, the one you're still missing, is that power without connection is just elaborate suicide. You're building an empire of coercion. But empires built on fear collapse the moment the fear shifts direction. Then what should I build on? I don't know, but not this. Scylla stands. You should leave Lamb. Not just this house. Rome, tonight. Before whatever you've started finishes you. Cassina almost laughs. I can't leave. I'm the Empress. No, you're a 16-year-old girl playing dress-up in a dead woman's crown. And the men around you are patient because they're waiting for you to hand them the rope they'll use to hang you. Let them try. Scylla walks to the door, pauses. When they kill you, and they will kill you, don't say I didn't warn you. She leaves. Cassina sits alone in the room that used to feel like freedom and now feels like tomb. She doesn't go back to the Sabura after that night. Doesn't need to. She's learned everything Scylla had to teach. The rest she'll figure out herself, or die trying. Probably die trying. But at least it will be her choice. The gatherings continue. Larger now. 15 women, then 20. Cassina's collection of secrets grows exponentially. She begins using them more strategically, not just blackmailing senators into voting with her husband, but orchestrating marriages, destroying reputations, clearing paths for women whose loyalty she's secured. She's building something. Not a conspiracy exactly. More like a shadow government where women pull strings that make Rome's powerful men dance without realizing they're puppets. It's brilliant. It's terrifying. It's doomed. But for 3 months, it works. Then Gaius Cillian requests a private audience. They meet in the palace gardens at dawn. No witnesses except statues of former emperors who can't report what they hear. You've been busy, Gaius says without preamble. Have I? Senator Marcus Antonius suddenly supports your husband after years of opposition. General Titus requests retirement the day after his wife attends one of your gatherings. The Vestal Quintilla champions your husband's grain reform, despite her order traditionally staying neutral. He counts on his fingers. Should I continue? Cassina's face reveals nothing. Coincidence? No, strategy. You're doing what no imperial wife has done, turning proximity to power into actual power. He moves closer. I admire it. The audacity. The precision. But you're making mistakes. Such as, you're assuming the men you're manipulating won't compare notes, that they'll stay isolated in their shame and fear. But shame binds people together, Cassina. Eventually they'll realize you're the common thread. And when they do, they'll unite against you faster than you can possibly imagine. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you alliance. He takes her hand. The touch sends electricity through her entire body. You have vision, but no protection. I have ambition, but no leverage. Together, we could remake Rome. Into what? Something better. Something where power isn't exclusively inherited by men who stutter, or boys who murder their families for throne rooms. His grip tightens. Something where you and I decide who rises and who falls. This is the moment. Cassina knows it with absolute certainty. She can pull away now, thank him politely, continue her careful shadow game. Stay Empress, stay safe, stay small. Or she can step forward into the beautiful, terrible thing he's offering. Power. Partnership. Ruin. Probably ruin. She kisses him. The kiss tastes like ambition and disaster. And finally choice. He responds with matching hunger. His hands in her hair. Her back against a marble column that's been standing since Rome was still a republic, still pretended to care about virtue. When they break apart, they're both breathing hard. This is insane, Cassina whispers. I know. If anyone finds out, they won't. My husband has spies everywhere. Narcissus. Let me worry about Narcissus. Gaius cups her face. You've been playing defense for months. Time to play offense. What does that mean? It means we stop manipulating from shadows. We take power directly, publicly. He's speaking faster now, eyes bright with the plan forming in his mind. Your husband is weak. The Senate barely respects him. The people don't love him. He's a placeholder. So we replace him. With who? With me. With us. He kisses her again. We stage a coup. Clean. Surgical. I have support in the Praetorian Guard. You have secrets on half the Senate. We combine our advantages, and within 6 months you're empress to an emperor who actually wants you, who sees you as partner, who won't waste your brilliance on state dinners and empty ceremonies. Cassina's heart pounds. This is madness. This is treason. This is exactly what some terrible part of her has wanted since the wedding crown first dug into her scalp. How? She asks. And Gaius begins explaining. The plan unfolds over 3 weeks. Secret meetings, coded messages, building coalition of officers who resent serving an emperor who stumbles over his words, senators who see opportunity in chaos, women from Cassina's gatherings who whisper support because they've tasted power and want more. It's brilliant. It's impossible. It might actually work. Except Narcissus knows everything. The informant in Cassina's gatherings reports every meeting. The freedman has his own spies in the Praetorian Guard. He watches the conspiracy build like architect, watching blueprint transform into building, waiting for the exact moment to demolish it for maximum political impact. He discusses timing with Paulus over wine one evening. When do we move? Paulus asks. When they commit to something irreversible, something so public that the emperor has no choice but to act. Narcissus smiles. Love makes people stupid. Ambition makes them reckless. Both together, that makes them dead. What if the coup succeeds? It won't. I've been bribing their supporters since the beginning. When the moment comes, every soldier they think is loyal will turn. Every senator who pledged support will recant. They'll stand alone, exposed, helpless. The Empress is still young. She might not understand what she's risking. She understands perfectly. That's what makes her dangerous. She knows the cost and doesn't care. Narcissus drinks. Women like her are rare. Usually they're killed young before they can fully weaponize themselves. But occasionally one survives long enough to become legend. Problem is, the legend always ends the same way. Blood, exile, execution. You almost sound sad about it. I am. Waste of potential. Narcissus sets down his cup. But Rome doesn't reward potential in women, only obedience. 3 weeks later, Cassina stands in her chambers wearing a wedding dress for the second time in her life. But this wedding isn't political. This wedding is treason. Gaius Cillian waits in a private chapel with 12 witnesses, senators who've pledged support, officers who've promised swords, women who believe revolution is coming. The emperor is away, inspecting grain shipments in Ostia. Cassina timed it perfectly, or thought she did. The ceremony begins. A priest bought with gold and promises speaks words about unity and partnership, about building new Rome on foundation of merit rather than blood. Cassina barely hears him. She's watching Gaius, seeing her future reflected in his eyes. Power, purpose, partnership, the things she was promised the first time and never received. Do you take this man? The doors explode open. Narcissus stands in the entrance with 50 Praetorian guards. Their swords are drawn. Their faces show no emotion. By order of Emperor Claudius, Narcissus says calmly, this assembly is charged with treason. You will all come peacefully, or you will come in pieces. Your choice. Cassina's world collapses in the space between heartbeats. Gaius reaches for his sword, stops, realizes the officers he thought were loyal have their blades pointed at him instead of the emperor's men. You, he starts. Me, Narcissus agrees. Every person you bribed, I bribed better. Every oath you secured, I broke with gold. You never had a chance, Senator. Neither of you did. Cassina finds her voice. Where's my husband? On his way. I sent word the moment you put on that dress. Narcissus signals his men. Arrest them. All of them. The Empress goes to the gardens of Lucullus. Senator Cillian to the Mamertine prison. Guards surge forward. Cassina feels hands on her arms, sees Gaius being dragged away. Their eyes meet across the chapel. He mouths, "I'm sorry." She doesn't respond, doesn't have words for the rage and betrayal and terrible crushing realization that Scylla was right. They were always going to lose. The game was rigged from the start, but she refuses to give Narcissus satisfaction of seeing her cry. As they lead her away, she holds her head high, still wearing the treasonous wedding dress. Still, every inch an empress. Even Empress is about to die. The gardens of Lucullus smell like jasmine and approaching death. Cassina stands in the center of the estate she stole through blackmail 8 months ago when she discovered the previous owner's affair with his sister and gave him the choice between exile or suicide. He chose exile. She took the gardens, added them to her collection of trophies earned through other people's shame. Now those same gardens are her prison. Guards surround the perimeter, 20 at least, maybe more. She can see their torches through the trees like predator eyes in darkness. Inside the villa, her mother waits. Domitia Lepida arrived an hour ago. Cassina hasn't seen her in 4 months. The last time was at a state dinner where they exchanged pleasantries like strangers, because that's what they'd become, 2 women trapped in the same political machinery, pretending family meant something other than leverage. Valeria. Her mother's voice cuts through the silence. Not Cassina, not Empress. Her birth name, the one she hasn't heard since childhood. Mother. Do you understand what you've done? Cassina almost laughs. Which part? The gatherings, the blackmail, the attempted coup. I've done so much, Mother. You'll need to be specific. Her mother slaps her, hard. The crack echoes off marble walls. Cassina's cheek burns. She tastes blood where her teeth cut inside her mouth. Doesn't raise her hand to the wound, just stares at her mother with eyes that have seen too much to register shock anymore. Don't be clever, Domitia hisses. Clever got you here. Clever is going to get you killed. I'm already dead. We both know that. Cassina walks to the window. Outside, more torches appear. The Emperor's men are gathering. The question is, how much of Rome dies with me? Rome. Her mother's laugh is bitter. You think this is about Rome? This is about you, Valeria, your pride, your refusal to accept the only role women are permitted in this world. What role? Decoration, broodmare, collateral in men's political transactions. Survivor. Domitia grabs her daughter's shoulders, forces her to turn. I survived. Your grandmother survived. Every woman in our family for 6 generations survived by understanding one simple truth: you cannot change Rome. You can only navigate it. Then I'd rather die trying than live as furniture. Her mother's grip tightens. You have children, 2 of them. Do you even remember their names anymore? Or are they just more casualties in your war against reality? The words hit harder than the slap. Cassina does have children. Britannicus, 5 years old, Octavia, 3. She's seen them maybe twice in the last 6 months. Too busy collecting secrets and plotting coups to play mother to kids she never wanted born from a marriage that was rape disguised as duty. They'll be fine, Cassina says, but her voice wavers. The Emperor won't hurt them. They're his blood. His blood, not yours. Domitia releases her. The moment you die, those children become orphans. The Senate will take them, raise them to hate your memory. Your son will be taught that his mother was a whore. Your daughter will be taught that her mother was a warning. Better they learn I fought than that I surrendered. There's no fighting this. There's only degrees of surrender. Her mother moves to the door, pauses. I came here to give you a choice. The Emperor's freed men are outside. Narcissus wants public execution. Crucifixion in the Forum. Wants to make you a spectacle that terrifies women for generations. And the alternative? Suicide. Tonight. With dignity. I'll stay with you. Hold your hand. Whisper prayers. Domitia's voice cracks. At least let me give you that much. A death that belongs to you instead of them. Cassina stares at her mother. Sees the woman who taught her to read, who braided her hair before her first betrothal meeting, who told her freedom was nothing because she'd never have any. Realizes they're both right and both wrong. Get out, Casina whispers. Valeria, get out. I'm not ready to die yet. Her mother leaves. The door closes. Casina stands alone in a villa that used to represent power and now represents the final joke of her short, violent life. She's 22 years old, about to die. And the worst part, some piece of her that still believes in impossible things wants to fight. But there's nothing left to fight with except rage, and rage without power is just screaming into darkness. The door opens again. Not her mother this time. Narcissus enters flanked by 2 guards. The Emperor's freedman looks tired, almost sympathetic, which makes him more dangerous than if he'd come gloating. Empress, he says. Don't call me that, we're past pretending. All right, Messalina. He uses her other name, the public one, the one historians will remember. Your mother told you the options, suicide or spectacle, generous. It's more generous than you deserve. Narcissus sits uninvited. I've been watching you for a year, since the first night you snuck out to the Sabura wearing that ridiculous blonde wig. Did you really think we didn't know? The revelation hits like ice water. You knew from the beginning. Of course. The Praetorian Guard reports to me. Every gate you passed through, every establishment you visited, every man you served, documented, filed, saved for exactly this moment. Then why wait? Because I needed you to believe you were winning. Needed you to accumulate enough evidence that when we moved against you, the case would be irrefutable. He leans forward. You're not the first empress to forget her place, but you might be the last. When Rome sees what happens to women who reach for power, they'll remember for centuries. Casina laughs. Can't help it. The absurdity crashes over her in waves. You're that afraid of us, of women, that you need to make my corpse into propaganda. Not afraid. Practical. Rome is built on hierarchy. When hierarchy breaks, empire breaks. Can't allow that. The hierarchy is already broken. Your emperor can barely speak. Your senate is corrupt. Your soldiers rape and steal. Your priests take bribes. But a woman trying to protect herself, that's the real threat. Yes, Narcissus stands. Because soldiers and senators and priests stay within their assigned categories. You tried to transcend yours. That's unforgivable. He moves toward the door. Stops. Your lover is already dead. Senator Cillian. We executed him an hour ago. Beheaded in the prison. Didn't even give him a trial. Wanted you to know before you make your choice. The words don't feel real at first. Then they do. Then they destroy something inside Casina that was still holding her together. Gaius is dead. The man who promised partnership, who saw her as equal, who made her believe for exactly 3 weeks that she could be more than ornament, beheaded like a common criminal. You didn't have to tell me that, she whispers. No, but I wanted you to understand. This isn't personal. It's inevitable. Rome eats people like you, has been eating them since the Republic fell. We'll keep eating them until the empire falls. You were never special, Messalina. Just another ambitious person who mistook temporary power for permanent change. He leaves. Casina stands very still, counts her heartbeats, gets to 40 before the grief hits. Then she's on the floor gasping, drowning in the realization that she destroyed everything: her children, her life, the man she might have loved if she'd had time to learn how, for a gamble that was rigged from the start. The Roman historian Tacitus would later write, Messalina, in the wantonness of power, went so far as to celebrate a formal marriage with Gaius Silius, while her husband yet lived. But Tacitus was writing 60 years later under emperors who needed Messalina to be monster. He never mentions that she was 22, that she'd been married at 15 to a man 3 times her age. That Roman law gave husbands absolute power over wives, including the right to kill them for adultery, while they themselves kept mistresses openly. History is written by survivors, and Messalina was about to stop surviving. But not yet. She stands, wipes her face, looks around the villa for something, anything she can use as weapon. Finds a kitchen knife, small, barely sharp, ridiculous, perfect. When the guard comes to check on her, she's ready. He opens the door expecting to find a crying girl. Instead finds a woman who spent 6 months learning how dangerous people operate by becoming dangerous herself. She drives the knife into his throat before he can shout. He falls gurgling. She takes his sword. It's heavier than she expected. Doesn't matter. She's not trying to win, just trying to choose how she loses. 2 more guards rush in. She kills the first with clumsy desperation. The second parries her swing easily, knocks the sword from her hands, pins her against the wall. "Don't," he says. "Please, I have orders to take you alive." "Then kill me. I'm giving you permission." "I can't. Do it." Cassina grabs his sword hand, tries to turn the blade toward her own chest. "Do it, or I'll make you." They struggle. The sword clatters to the floor. More guards pour in. 6, 8, too many. They wrestle her down. She fights like an animal, bites someone's hand, kicks another in the face, screaming now. Not words, just sound. Pure rage, translated into noise. They pin her, hold her, wait for her to exhaust herself. She doesn't exhaust. Keeps fighting even when it's pointless. Because pointless resistance is still resistance. Because dying on her feet beats living on her knees. Because if she's going to be erased from history, she'll make them work for it. Finally, her mother reappears, moves through the guards like ghost, kneels beside her daughter, who's still pinned to the floor, still snarling, still refusing to surrender. "Valeria, shh, shh." Domitia strokes her daughter's hair like she did when Cassina was 5 and afraid of storms. "It's over, baby. It's over." "No, not yet. Not until..." "Yes. Now. It has to be now." Her mother pulls something from her robes, a vial, poison probably. "Take this, please. Don't make them drag you to the forum in chains. Don't give them that satisfaction." Cassina stares at the vial. It would be so easy. Drink, sleep, stop hurting, stop failing. Stop being the daughter who destroyed her family, the mother who abandoned her children, the empress who proved every man right about what happens when women want power. "I can't," she whispers. "You can. I'll be with you. I promise. Right here. Until the end." Will it hurt? No. Just sleep. Like falling asleep. Cassina reaches for the vial. Her hand shakes. She can't make her fingers close around it. Her mother understands. Takes the vial. Uncorks it. Holds it to her daughter's lips like feeding a child. "Drink," Domitia whispers. "Please. For me. For your children. For whatever part of you is still my daughter. Drink." Cassina drinks. The poison tastes like cherries and metal, and the death of every hope she ever had. Burns going down. She coughs. Her mother holds her tighter. "That's it. Good girl. Almost over." But the poison works slowly. Too slowly. Minutes pass. Cassina can feel it spreading through her blood, but she's still conscious. Still aware. The guards are getting impatient. "She's not dying fast enough," one says. "Get a blade," another responds. "No," Domitia's voice turns steel. "Give her dignity at least. Give her time." More minutes. Cassina's vision blurs. She can see her mother's face above her, can see the tears streaming down cheeks that never showed emotion at state dinners and political meetings. "I'm sorry," Cassina whispers. "For everything. For being..." "Don't. Don't apologize. You were brave. Stupid and doomed, but brave." Her mother kisses her forehead. "That's more than most people manage." "My children. Tell them..." Cassina coughs. Blood flecks her lips. "Tell them I loved them even though I didn't know how." "I will. I promise." But Domitia is lying. She won't tell them anything. Can't. Because within a week the emperor will order Cassina's name erased from all records. Her children will be forbidden from speaking of her. The Senate will pass a motion declaring her memory damned for eternity. And the children will grow up believing their mother was a monster. The blade comes anyway. One of the guards loses patience. Steps forward. His sword flashes in lamplight. Cassina sees it coming. Doesn't have energy to move. Doesn't want to. She closes her eyes. feels the steel enter her chest, feels her mother's arms around her, feels nothing. The last thing she hears is Domitius screaming, not words, just sound. A mother's grief translated into something language can't contain, then silence, then nothing. Outside the villa, Narcissus receives the news, nods once, returns to the palace to inform the emperor that his wife is dead, that the conspiracy is crushed, that Rome is safe from ambitious women for another generation. Claudius receives the news while eating grapes, asks which grapes these are from Gaul or Egypt, doesn't ask about his wife, never asks about his wife again. Within hours, soldiers arrive at every establishment Messalina ever visited. Every woman who attended her gatherings is questioned. Most are released with warnings. Some disappear into prison. 2 commit suicide before they can be arrested. Sylla's brothels get raided. The emperor's men turn them inside out looking for evidence. They find nothing because Sylla burned everything the day she heard about the wedding. When soldiers drag her before Narcissus for questioning, Sylla tells them, "I knew a girl named Helena who worked here briefly. Didn't know she was anyone important. Didn't ask questions. That's how you survive in the Subura, you don't ask questions." They believe her because it's easier than admitting an empress walked among prostitutes for 6 months and nobody noticed, or because some did notice and didn't care, or because the whole story is embarrassing for everyone involved. Sylla returns to the Subura, pours wine, tells her girls, "Never trust someone who has everything to lose. They'll take you down with them when they fall." The women nod. They've heard versions of this lesson their entire lives. It never stops being true. In the palace, Cassina's children are given new tutors who teach them their mother was wicked, that she betrayed Rome, that speaking her name brings curse. Britannicus is too young to understand. Octavia remembers her mother's face, but learns quickly that remembering is dangerous. They grow up orphans in the palace where their mother once ruled, surrounded by servants who won't meet their eyes, raised by a father who stutters through dinner conversations and dies 9 years later from poisoned mushrooms fed to him by his next wife. That wife, Agrippina, will become even more ambitious than Messalina ever was. Will actually succeed in putting her son Nero on the throne. Will prove that the problem was never female ambition, just female ambition that moved too fast, too visibly too young. But that's another story, another tragedy. Another woman who believed she could reshape Rome and discovered too late that Rome doesn't reshape. It just grinds people into dust and calls the dust history. Back in the gardens of Lucullus, slaves wash blood from marble floors, bury Messalina's body in unmarked grave, plant flowers over the spot so no one will remember exactly where Rome's most infamous empress returned to dirt. The gardens themselves get absorbed back into imperial property, used for parties, state dinners, the same meaningless ceremonies Messalina hated. And slowly, so slowly, most people don't notice her story transforms. The blackmail becomes prostitution. The gatherings become orgies. The desperate attempt at coup becomes lustful conspiracy. The human being becomes myth, becomes warning, becomes lie. Within a generation, Roman writers are claiming she competed with prostitutes to see who could service the most men, that she won the competition, that she celebrated victory openly, that she had no shame, no morality, no humanity. The number changes depending on who tells the story. 25 men, 50 men, 100. Doesn't matter. The point isn't accuracy. The point is making sure every girl in Rome understands what happens to women who forget their place. Juvenal, the satirist, would write, "She left the imperial bed to ply her trade at the brothel, assuming the name Lysiska, and stood at the door inviting customers." Pliny the Elder would write, "Messalina competed with a notorious prostitute and won after servicing 25 men in one night." Tacitus would write, "Messalina celebrated a formal marriage with Silius, while her husband yet lived a thing unheard of, a thing unprecedented in Roman history." But none of them mentioned she was barely out of childhood. None mention that Roman law gave her husband absolute power over her body. None mention that the men condemning her had mistresses visited brothels, raped their slaves, and faced zero consequences. Because history isn't about truth. It's about control. About deciding whose story gets remembered and whose gets transformed into cautionary tale. And Messalina's story, whatever it actually was, got swallowed by Rome's hunger for simple narratives about complicated women. But here's what they couldn't erase entirely somewhere in the propaganda and exaggeration and lies. There's a girl who refused, who looked at the cage built around her and chose destruction over surrender, who understood she was doomed and decided to make her doom loud enough that people would still be arguing about it 2,000 years later. That's not nothing. It's not victory. But it's not nothing. The Senate meets 3 days after Messalina's death to decide what happens to her memory. 47 senators crowd into the chamber. Most of them slept with her. Some of them feared her. All of them vote to condemn her. Senator Valerius Asiaticus stands first. He's 60, survived 3 emperors by knowing exactly when to speak and when to stay silent. This morning he chooses speaking. Conscript fathers, we gather to address the recent unpleasantness. His voice carries practiced authority. The former empress committed acts that threaten the moral foundation of Rome. I propose damnatio memoriae, complete erasure, her name removed from all monuments, her face chiseled from all statues, her children forbidden from speaking of her, as if she never existed. Murmurs of agreement ripple through the chamber, but one senator stands. Younger man, maybe 30. Name is Lucius Vitellius. He's shaking. Voice cracks when he speaks. With respect to my esteemed colleague, isn't this excessive? She's already dead. Her conspiracy crushed. What more punishment does a corpse require? The chamber goes silent. Everyone stares at Vitellius like he just suggested burning the Temple of Jupiter. Asiaticus smiles. It's not a kind smile. Senator, you're young. Perhaps you don't understand how memory works in Rome. A dead emperor can be more dangerous than a living one if his memory inspires others. Same applies to empresses, especially this one. But she was 22 years old, barely more than a child. A child who nearly toppled an empire. Asiaticus moves closer to Vitellius. Tell me, Senator, did you attend any of her gatherings? Perhaps you have sympathies that cloud your judgment. The threat hangs in the air like blade. Vitellius sits down fast, says nothing more. The vote proceeds. Unanimous. 47 senators agree Messalina never existed, except she did. And erasing her takes work. Stone workers arrive at the forum the next morning. They carry chisels and hammers. Their job is to remove her face from the imperial monument, a massive marble relief showing the emperor and his family receiving tribute from conquered nations. One worker, a Greek named Philippos, pauses before striking the first blow. He's carved stone for 20 years, restored temples, created busts of generals and senators, but he's never been ordered to destroy his own work before. His apprentice, a boy named Marcus, asks, "Master, why are we doing this?" The carving is beautiful, because Rome says it never existed. But we can see it, it's right there. Not after today. Philippos raises his chisel, positions it over Messalina's marble face. She's carved smiling the way empresses smile in official monuments. Serene, unthreatening. Exactly what she wasn't. He strikes. The chisel bites into stone. Marble chips fall like snow. Marcus watches. Did she really do all the things they say, the brothels and the competition, and doesn't matter what she did? Matters what they say she did. Another strike. Messalina's nose crumbles. In Rome, truth is whatever survives, and she didn't survive. They work for 3 days. When they finish, the monument shows an emperor, his son, his daughter, and a blank space where the empress used to be. The space is obvious, intentional, a warning carved in absence. But something strange happens over the following weeks. People start leaving flowers in front of the blank space, small offerings, coins, notes written in Greek and Latin. Some say prayers, some say curses, most say nothing, just acknowledge the woman-shaped hole in the marble. The Praetorian Guard clears the offerings every morning. By evening, new ones appear. Narcissus notices, mentions it to Paulus over wine one evening. The people are mourning her, Narcissus says. Despite everything we've told them, despite the Senate's condemnation, they're treating that blank space like a shrine. Why, Paulus asks. She betrayed Rome. Did she, or did she just want what every man in the Senate wants? Power, autonomy, choice. Narcissus drinks deeply. We made her a monster. But monsters are interesting. Martyrs are dangerous. I'm worried we've created both. What do you suggest? Double the propaganda. Have poets write about her depravity. Historians document her crimes. Make the story so grotesque that sympathy becomes impossible. Paulus nods. I'll speak to Juvenal. He's always eager to please. And so begins the real erasure, not just of Messalina's face, but of her humanity. The writers get to work. Juvenal writes first. His satire spreads through Rome like fire. See how Messalina, the emperor's wife, left the palace at night wearing a blonde wig accompanied only by one maid. She entered a brothel warm with the breath of customers and took up an empty cell, her cell, the one reserved for Lysiska, her false name. She stood there naked, her nipples gilded, displaying the womb that bore noble children. She welcomed customers with a smile, took their money, lay on her back for anyone who paid. When the brothel keeper dismissed the girls, she lingered always last to leave, then returned to the imperial palace, carrying with her the stench of the brothel. The poem spreads. People memorize it, recite it at parties. The image crystallizes the empress as prostitute. The highest brought lowest. The perfect moral. But Juvenal is writing 60 years after Messalina's death. He never met her, never verified his sources, just took rumors and exaggerated them into entertainment. Still, entertainment becomes history when enough people believe it. Tacitus writes next. He's more careful. Positions himself as objective recorder. Messalina, in the wantonness of power and prompted by restlessness that bordered on insanity, celebrated a formal marriage with Gaius Silius. I am aware that this seems incredible. I could have softened the story, but I prefer to state the truth as it was given to me by my elders. The palace trembled, especially those whose power depended on virtue, Narcissus, Paulus, the freedmen who maintained order. They saw in this marriage not just adultery, but revolution. Tacitus at least acknowledges the political dimension, understands this was about power, not just lust. But he still calls her insane, still frames her actions as inexplicable feminine excess, rather than desperate political gambit. And then comes Pliny the Elder. Naturalist, scholar, man obsessed with cataloging extremes. He writes about Messalina like she's a specimen to be studied. Messalina, wife of Emperor Claudius, believing this to be a victory worthy of an empress, chose a certain prostitute from among those who plied their trade for hire and challenged her to competition. The contest lasted through one day and night. Messalina won after serving 25 men. She returned to the palace at dawn, sated but triumphant. 25 men. The number that will echo through centuries. Repeated so often it becomes fact, despite being biologically improbable and politically convenient. 3 writers, 3 versions, all claiming truth, all serving the same purpose, making sure Messalina becomes warning instead of woman. But here's what none of them mention: Roman men visited brothels constantly. Cicero wrote love letters to a prostitute. Augustus kept mistresses openly. Tiberius built a villa on Capri, dedicated entirely to orgies with children. Caligula raped senators' wives at dinner parties. Nero murdered his mother, kicked his pregnant wife to death, and castrated a boy to marry him. Yet these men are remembered as complex, flawed maybe, occasionally cruel, but fundamentally human. Messalina gets remembered as monster. The double standard isn't accident, it's architecture. Rome is built on the idea that men act and women react, that men conquer and women submit, that male sexuality is natural and female sexuality is threat. Any woman who violates these rules must be destroyed so thoroughly that other women learn the lesson. And for 2,000 years, the lesson holds. In the palace, Messalina's children learn this lesson firsthand. Britannicus is 7 now. old enough to ask questions, young enough to believe the answers. His tutor, an old Greek named Sosibius, teaches him about his mother using the official history. The sanitized, weaponized version designed to make sure he never questions Rome's judgment. Your mother was ill, Sosibius explains one afternoon. They're sitting in the garden where Messalina used to walk, where she probably played with Britannicus before ambition consumed her completely. She had a sickness of the mind that made her do terrible things. What things? Britannicus asks. Things children shouldn't know about. Shameful things. Things that threatened Rome itself. But she was my mother. She must have been good sometimes. Right? Sosibius hesitates. This is the moment. He could tell the truth, that she was complicated, that she was trapped, that she made choices that seemed reasonable from inside her cage. But truth serves no purpose here. Truth is dangerous. No, he says finally. She was not good. She was warned many times, given chances to change. She refused. So Rome had no choice but to correct the problem. Correct means kill. Correct means protect. Rome protects itself from threats. Your mother was a threat. Britannicus processes this, 7 years old and learning that his mother deserved to die, that her memory deserves erasure, that loving her means betraying Rome. I don't remember her face, he says quietly. I try, but I can't. That's natural. You were very young. Will I forget her completely? Perhaps. Perhaps that's kindest. But forgetting isn't kind. Forgetting is violence. Selective amnesia designed to serve power. Britannicus will carry this violence inside him forever. Will grow into teenager who distrusts women. Will die at 13 poisoned by his stepmother Agrippina, who learned from Messalina's mistakes and succeeded where Messalina failed. The irony is, Britannicus will be poisoned on the orders of a woman even more ambitious than his mother, but Agrippina will be remembered as cunning rather than depraved, powerful rather than insane. The difference, timing, strategy, and most importantly, she'll put her son Nero on the throne before they kill her. Success redeems ambition. Failure condemns it. Messalina failed, so she becomes monster. Octavia fares worse. She's 5. Just old enough to remember her mother's voice, but not old enough to defend the memory against propaganda. Her nurse, a woman named Acte, is kinder than Britannicus's tutor. But kindness only goes so far in Rome. Where's mother? Octavia asks one night before sleep. Acte strokes her hair. Gone, little one. Gone where? To the gods. Will she come back? No, she can't. Why not? Because Rome killed her. Because she wanted power, and Rome only permits men to want power. Because she made enemies faster than allies and paid with her blood. But Acte can't say any of this. So she says, because the gods needed her more than we did. It's a lie. But lies are how children survive in the imperial palace, how everyone survives. Octavia will grow up believing her mother abandoned her, will marry Nero at 14, will be exiled and executed at 22, the same age her mother died. The cycle continues. Women punished for existing in proximity to power. Their stories twisted into warnings. Their deaths justified as necessary corrections. And through it all, one object survives. In a locked chest beneath the palace stored with other imperial documents no one is permitted to read, there's a letter, written on papyrus, sealed with Messalina's personal signet, a wolf nursing twins. The letter is addressed to her children, written the night before her arrest, never delivered. The letter says, Britannicus Octavia, if you ever read this, you'll be old enough to understand that your mother was not the monster they'll tell you she was. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, trusted the wrong people, moved too fast, believed I could change Rome instead of recognizing that Rome changes everyone. But I want you to know I didn't do any of it from cruelty. I did it from fear that being empress meant being erased. That power held by permission is not power at all. that the only way to survive was to become dangerous enough that danger itself became protection. I was wrong. Danger didn't protect me. It accelerated my destruction. So here's what I learned too late to save myself. You cannot win against Rome, cannot change it, can only choose how you lose. I chose to lose fighting, to die on my feet instead of living on my knees, to be remembered, even remembered as monster, rather than forgotten completely. Was it worth it? I don't know. Ask me when we meet in whatever comes next. Until then, know this. I loved you. Imperfectly, inadequately, but genuinely. Your mother, Valeria Messalina. The letter stays sealed. Narcissus finds it during a search of her chambers. Reads it once, considers burning it. Decides instead to file it away. Hidden, but not destroyed. Because someday, maybe not in his lifetime, maybe not for generations, someone will find this letter, will read it, will realize that history is written by survivors, and Messalina was not survivor. She was sacrifice, offered up to maintain the fiction that Rome's hierarchy was natural rather than enforced, that male power was earned rather than inherited, that women who wanted autonomy were sick rather than human. But letters survive fire. Truth survives propaganda. Not immediately, not completely, but enough. 2,000 years later, historians will find this letter in Vatican archives, will debate its authenticity, will argue about whether it changes anything. It changes nothing and everything. The facts remain the same. The interpretation shifts, and that shift matters. Because Messalina is no longer just the empress who competed with prostitutes. She's also the 22-year-old who wrote to her children from inside a collapsing world, trying to explain decisions that seemed rational in context, but insane from outside. She's both. Monster and mother. Ambitious and desperate. Guilty and victim. Just like Rome itself. Empire and prison. Glory and graveyard. Civilization built on bones. Back in the Forum, someone leaves fresh flowers at the blank space where Messalina's face used to be. The Praetorian Guard clears them. Tomorrow, new flowers will appear. The cycle continues. The warning stands. The lesson gets taught and retaught and taught again. But underneath, barely audible, a different story whispers. Not about a woman who was evil. About a system that made evil the only option available to women who refused submission. About a girl married at 15, an empress at 16, a legend by 22. About choices made in cages and called freedom. About power that was actually performance. About a coup that was actually cry for help. About how history remembers women not as they were, but as men needed them to be. And about how sometimes the blank space tells more truth than the statue ever did. The flowers keep coming. The warnings keep failing. The story refuses to die completely, because stories that end with "she deserved it" never actually end. They just wait, accumulate questions, eventually become the thing they were designed to prevent. Messalina's erasure becomes her immortality. Her condemnation becomes her vindication. Her death becomes her voice. 2,000 years later, we're still arguing about her, still trying to understand. Still asking if she was monster or victim or both or neither. Still proving that you can erase a face from marble, but not a question from history. And that might be the greatest revenge of all. The flowers keep appearing for 3 months. Then they stop. Not because people stop caring, because the Praetorian Guard starts arresting anyone caught leaving offerings at the blank space where Messalina's face used to be. 5 arrests, then 10, then 20. Eventually the message is clear. Mourning her is treason. So the mourning goes underground. In a tavern near the Subura, a woman named Julia tells her daughter about the empress who walked among prostitutes. The story is already changing, already becoming myth. Julia adds details that might be true, might be invented, probably don't matter. She wasn't afraid, Julia says. That's what you need to understand. They gave her every reason to be small and quiet and grateful. She chose loud instead, chose dangerous, chose herself. Her daughter, barely 14, already promised in marriage to a man 3 times her age, asks, did it work? Choosing herself. No, they killed her for it. Then what's the point? Julia pours more wine, thinks about her own life, her own compromises, her own slow erasure. The point is, she refused to pretend the cage was freedom, refused to call her chains jewelry. That refusal echoes, even now, even here. Echoes don't feed children. No, but they remind us we're more than just stomachs and wombs. Julia leans closer. Listen to me. You're going to marry that old man. You're going to smile and obey and survive. But somewhere inside, keep a small space that's just yours, where you remember the Empress who said no, where you practice saying it yourself, even if only in whispers. The daughter nods. Doesn't fully understand yet. Will understand in 5 years when her husband beats her for speaking during dinner. Will understand in 10 years when she discovers he's been raping the kitchen slaves. Will understand in 15 years when she finally poisons his wine and watches him die choking. She'll think of Messalina then. We'll leave flowers at the blank space even though it's illegal. We'll get arrested. We'll spend 3 months in prison. But she'll survive. And she'll tell her daughters the same story her mother told her. The story of the Empress who refused. The story spreads, changes, grows, becomes 5 different stories. 10. 100. In one version, Messalina is hero. Feminist before the word exists. Warrior against patriarchy. In another, she's villain. Cautionary tale about female ambition. Proof that women can't handle power. In a third, she's victim. Married too young. Traumatized by loveless marriage. Acting out from pain rather than malice. In a fourth, she's revolutionary. Trying to overthrow corrupt system. Destroyed before she could succeed. In a fifth, she's all of these, none of these. Something more complex than stories usually allow. The truth is, like most truth, none of these stories are complete. They're angles, perspectives, ways of processing a woman who doesn't fit comfortable categories. But here's what's interesting, even the stories that condemn her acknowledge she existed, that she mattered, that she did something worth remembering even if that something was being spectacularly wrong. And in Rome, being remembered at all is a kind of victory. 9 years after Messalina's death, something unexpected happens. A young historian named Marcus Antonius arrives in Rome from Alexandria. He's 25. He's ambitious, wants to make his name writing the definitive history of recent emperors. He starts researching Claudius's reign, inevitably encounters the Messalina story. But Marcus is trained in the Alexandrian method: source criticism, cross-referencing skepticism toward propaganda. He reads Juvenal's satire and immediately notices problems. He writes in his journal, Juvenal claims Messalina worked in brothels nightly for months, but palace records show she attended state dinners, religious ceremonies, and public events. On many of the nights he claims she was selling herself in the Subura. Either she could teleport or someone is lying. He keeps digging, finds contradictions, timeline issues, stories that change depending on who's telling them. He interviews people who actually knew her. Most are too afraid to speak honestly, but he finds a few willing to talk off the record. A former palace slave, now freed living in Ostia, tells him, "The Empress was kind to me. Once I broke an expensive vase. I thought I'd be beaten or worse. She just said accidents happen and told the steward to clean it up. That doesn't mean she was good. Just means she was human. More human than most people with power." A senator who attended her gatherings admits, "Yes, we talked about forbidden things, but it wasn't all sex and scandal. Sometimes we discussed philosophy, poetry. She was educated, sharp. She saw through the performance everyone else accepted as reality. That made her dangerous." A woman who attended the gathering says, "She asked us what we wanted, actually asked. No one asks women that. We're told what we want: marriage, children, obedience. She asked what we actually wanted. For some of us, just being asked was revolutionary." Marcus compiles these interviews, writes a draft challenging the official narrative, shows it to his mentor. The mentor reads it, looks at Marcus like he's holding a lit torch inside a powder magazine. "Burn this," the mentor says. "What, why?" "Because questioning Messalina's guilt means questioning the Senate's judgment, which means questioning imperial authority, which means you'll be arrested before your book is published. But the evidence doesn't matter. Not with this. She's been declared evil, officially, permanently. Your job as historian is to explain why she was evil, not whether she was evil. Understand?" Marcus understands. Burns his draft, writes the sanitized version instead, calls Messalina victim of her own passions, and warned by wiser heads but unable to control her appetites. His book becomes popular, gets quoted by later historians, adds another layer to the myth. But before he dies 30 years later, after writing 6 more books, after establishing himself as Rome's preeminent historian, Marcus writes one final document, a letter, sealed, to be opened only after his death. The letter says, "To whoever reads this, know that I lied. Not about facts, but about interpretation. I wrote what was safe instead of what was true. Messalina was not monster, was not saint, was woman trapped in system designed to destroy ambitious women, and she destroyed herself trying to escape it. She deserves better than propaganda, but I lacked courage to give her better. Forgive me. Do better than I did. Tell complicated truth instead of comfortable lie." The letter survives, gets discovered in the 18th century, changes nothing about how Messalina is remembered, because by then her story has hardened into canonical truth. The empress who competed with prostitutes, the woman who betrayed Rome, the warning carved in marble and repeated for millennia. But something else happens too, something the Senate didn't anticipate when they voted for erasure. Every generation produces women who see themselves in Messalina, not in the propaganda version, in the human version underneath. The girl married too young, the woman with no legal autonomy, the person who wanted agency and got death instead. These women don't leave flowers at blank spaces anymore. They write, paint, compose, create art that keeps asking the question. Rome tried to answer permanently. Was she monster? Or was she just human in a world that punished human women for wanting human things? In 1850, a French novelist named Félicité Robert writes, "The Empress and the Prostitute reimagining Messalina as tragic heroine rather than villain." The book is controversial, gets banned in several countries, becomes underground bestseller. In 1920, a suffragette in London gives a speech invoking Messalina. They called her depraved for wanting power. They call us hysterical for wanting votes. The tactics don't change, only the century. In 1970, a feminist historian publishes Messalina Reconsidered, arguing that every primary source condemning her was written by men with political motives to destroy her reputation. The book sparks academic debate that continues for decades. In 2010, a blogger writes, "Messalina had agency in a world that didn't permit female agency. She used the only tools available, sexuality manipulation secrets. We condemn the tools while ignoring why she needed them in the first place." The conversation evolves. Messalina becomes Rorschach test. People see in her story what they need to see, what their own context demands they see. Some see warning. Some see victim. Some see rebel. Some see all three. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the story survives because it's complicated. Because it resists simple interpretation. Because 2,200 years later, we're still arguing about whether a 22-year-old empress deserved execution for trying to escape her cage. That argument is the real legacy, not the propaganda. The question. Back in Rome, 1st century 48 CE, the Emperor Claudius marries again. Her name is Agrippina. She's Messalina's cousin. She learned from Messalina's mistakes, moves slower, builds alliances carefully, uses her son Nero as weapon instead of lover as weapon, accumulates power incrementally instead of grabbing it desperately. Within 6 years, Agrippina successfully poisons Claudius, puts Nero on throne, becomes most powerful woman in Rome, achieves everything Messalina attempted, then Nero murders her, because the pattern doesn't break. Rome allows women proximity to power, but never power itself. Women who forget this lesson get reminded with steel. Agrippina's death proves what Messalina's death taught. The problem was never strategy. The problem was being female in empire built on male supremacy. No amount of cleverness fixes structural inequality. You just choose how you lose. But here's the thing about losing. Sometimes it plants seeds for future victories. Messalina lost, died young, got erased, got condemned, got turned into monster. But her story survived. Got told and reinterpreted until the original propaganda became absurd, until people started asking questions, until the blank space became more interesting than the statue ever was. That's not victory, but it's not nothing. In the palace, Britannicus grows into teenager, still remembers his mother's voice sometimes, still forbidden from speaking of her, still carrying trauma of being told your mother was evil and you share her blood. He dies at 13, poisoned by Nero at dinner. His last words are mother. No one knows which mother he meant, birth mother or stepmother, the woman erased or the woman who ordered his killing. Doesn't matter. He dies either way. Octavia lives longer, marries Nero, becomes empress herself, discovers what her mother discovered, that the title means nothing without power, and power is forbidden to women who wear crowns. Nero divorces her, exiles her, eventually has her executed. She's 22 when she dies. Same age as her mother. Same age as so many women throughout history who reached for something beyond submission and paid with their lives. Before her execution, Octavia is allowed one request. She asks for her mother's letter, the one that was never delivered, the one locked in imperial archives. Narcissus, old, now retired, guilt-ridden, retrieves it, reads it to her the night before she dies. When he finishes, Octavia is crying. Not from sadness, from recognition. She was right, Octavia whispers. You can't win against Rome. You just choose how you lose. Yes, Narcissus says. I'm sorry. Don't be. You were just doing your job. Everyone was just doing their jobs. That's how systems destroy people, distribute guilt so widely that nobody feels responsible. Narcissus has no response. Leaves, returns to his villa, writes his own confession to be opened after death. It says, I destroyed Messalina because I believed she threatened Rome. Now I understand she didn't threaten Rome. She threatened the lie Rome tells itself, that our empire is just, that our hierarchy is natural, that the people we crush deserved crushing. She was mirror showing us our ugliness, so we shattered the mirror and called it justice. The confession survives, gets filed with Marcus's letter and Messalina's letter and dozens of other documents that slowly over centuries complicate the simple story. The simple story is evil empress got what she deserved. The complicated story is traumatized girl in impossible situation, made desperate choices and paid with her life, while men who did worse lived to old age. Both stories are true. Neither is complete. 2,000 years later, we're still trying to reconcile them. A museum in Rome displays Messalina's jewelry, a golden bracelet engraved with wolves, a ring bearing her seal. Physical proof she existed, contradicting the erasure that declared her non-existent. Tour guides tell visitors, this belonged to Rome's most infamous empress. Then they list the crimes, the brothels, the competition, the betrayal. Some visitors nod, some frown, some ask questions the tour guides can't answer. Why did she do it? What was she thinking? Could she have made different choices? The questions hover like ghosts, unanswered, maybe unanswerable, because we're trying to understand a person through propaganda written by her enemies, trying to reconstruct humanity from condemnation, trying to find truth in system designed to hide it. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the searching matters more than finding. Maybe the real legacy isn't what Messalina did. It's what her story does to us. How it forces us to ask, what would I do? In her position, with her options, knowing what she knew, would I submit? Would I fight? Would I try to change the system or destroy myself trying? There's no right answer, only choices, all of them bad, all of them human. And perhaps that's the final lesson, that Messalina wasn't special, wasn't uniquely depraved or uniquely victimized. She was just a person in terrible circumstances who made human decisions and got human consequences. The tragedy isn't that she failed. The tragedy is that failure was inevitable. The system was designed to crush women like her. And when the crushing was complete, the system declared victory and wrote history to justify the crushing. But history keeps getting rewritten. New evidence emerges. New perspectives develop. The blank space keeps accumulating meaning. And somewhere in a classroom, in a coffee shop, in a late-night conversation between friends, someone asks, what if she wasn't monster? What if she was just trapped? That question is dangerous, always has been. Because once you start questioning one victim's guilt, you have to question the system that made victimhood inevitable. Once you ask, did Messalina deserve death? You have to ask, does anyone deserve erasure? Does power justify cruelty? Does stability require sacrifice? These questions don't have safe answers. That's why Rome tried to eliminate them with propaganda. But questions are harder to kill than people. They survive, evolve, spread. And 2 millennia later, Messalina's question still echoes. What do you do when the cage is so beautiful everyone calls it freedom? When submission is so normalized that resistance looks insane? When the only way out is through destruction and destruction is called crime, you can answer, submit. Many do, most do. Survival requires compromise. You can answer, fight. Some do, they usually lose. But losing loudly becomes its own form of winning. Or you can answer, there is no answer. Acknowledge complexity. Hold contradictions. Admit that some situations are just trap and judgment from outside the trap is cheap. Messalina chose fighting, chose loud, chose ruin over submission. History condemned her for it. History also remembers her for it. 2,000 years of condemnation. 2,000 years of memory. 2,000 years of people arguing about whether she was monster or victim or both or neither. That's her legacy, not the propaganda. The argument. The flowers that kept appearing despite arrests. The women who saw themselves in her story despite warnings. The historians who questioned despite danger. The artists who reinterpreted despite backlash. The blank space that became shrine. The erased face that became symbol. The condemned empress who became question that won't die. So here's the truth under the myth. Messalina was 22. She was married at 15. She had less autonomy than male slaves. She wanted power and got death. She deserved better than her choices allowed. She made terrible decisions from impossible position. She was human in a world that required women to be either angels or monsters, and she refused both, so they made her monster anyway. And if you're watching this, if you've stayed until now, you're part of her legacy. Because you're asking the question Rome tried to answer permanently. You're seeing complexity where history provided simplicity. You're refusing the easy story. That refusal matters, not because it changes the past, because it changes how we understand present. Every time someone asks, was she monster, they're really asking, are women who want power still threatening? Are ambitious women still punished? Is the system still designed to crush certain people and call it justice? And the answer, uncomfortable, undeniable, is yes. The tactics evolved, the technology updated. But the pattern persists. Women who want power get called ambitious in ways men never are. Women who express sexuality get called shameful in ways men never are. Women who make mistakes get punished harder than men who commit crimes. The cage got bigger, got prettier, but it's still cage, and women still have to choose submit, fight, find third option nobody's invented yet. Messalina chose fighting. paid with her life, became warning, but warnings only work if people heed them. And people keep not heeding them. Keep reaching for power anyway. Keep saying no anyway. Keep refusing submission anyway, because the alternative is living on your knees. And some people would rather die standing. That choice, that fundamental human choice between safety and selfhood, is what Messalina represents. Not the propaganda, not the myth, the choice. So if you believe her name deserves to be remembered correctly, share this story. Write her name in the comments, not as monster, not as saint, as human. Flawed, desperate, doomed human. As someone who existed, who mattered, who made choices, who lost everything, who survived anyway through story, through question, through refusing to be fully erased. The blank space is still there in Rome. Visit it. Leave flowers if you want. Risk arrest if you dare. Or just stand there thinking about what it means that absence can be more powerful than presence. That sometimes the erased become immortal through erasure. That history is argument, not answer. And that 2,200 years later, we're still arguing about a 22-year-old empress who refused to disappear. That's not the ending Rome wanted, but it's the ending she earned. The flowers keep coming. The story keeps changing. The question keeps echoing. And somewhere in a classroom, in a coffee shop, in your mind right now, someone is asking, what would I do? That's her legacy. Not what she did, what she makes us ask. The myth becomes mirror. The history becomes choice. The condemned empress becomes conversation that outlives empires. And maybe that's the greatest revenge of all.